Welcome back to HFO Multifamily Market Watch, your trusted source for information for apartment owners and investors. Multifamily Market Watch is presented by Pacific Exteriors Northwest, a contractor specializing in siding and exterior envelopes and delivering exceptional quality and service for over 30 years. And by Gantry Incorporated, the nation's largest independent mortgage banking firm.
Welcome back to HFO TV. I'm Greg Frick, partner at HFO Investment Real Estate. Today we have with us new City Councilor Olivia Clark from District 4. Thank you for taking the time to come speak to our audience. I also have Zach with Multifamily Northwest here as well. Again, first off, congratulations.
Thank you.
It was a lot of people running in this election, and it's great that we're beyond that now and now get started to this new City Council. So congratulations. Maybe give people that don't know some little background about you and what inspired you to run for City Council.
Sure. And thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate being here and talking to your members. I'm a longtime public servant. I actually started my career, I've spent my entire career in Oregon.
Okay.
I started out as an affordable housing advocate. Interestingly enough, for our topic today, really an advocate for affordable housing. I traveled around the state. I built a coalition. I went to the legislature and lobbied on housing issues, trying to broaden the authority of the state housing, which was a housing finance agency in those days. Now it's much broader. Had legislation introduced on community development corporations, the nonprofits, that sort of thing. And then I moved on and I went to work in government. I was a lobbyist for the city of Salem under 3 mayors in 5 years. You can imagine how intense that was. I worked on public safety issues, lots of other issues. I moved on to state government. I spent a short amount of time at the Department of Environmental Quality, getting the state's clean air plan updated in a challenging situation. And then I went to work for Governor Kitzhaber in his first 2 terms. I was his liaison to the cities and counties all over the state. In fact, I had worked with Barbara Roberts' administration as a liaison during her conversation with Oregon, which is probably predates your time here.
I remember that. Yes.
You remember? Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I worked with her around the state as her liaison to cities and counties when she was having that conversation. So I knew my way around the state when I went to work for Governor Kitzhaber, traveled with him all over the state, and helped forge a better relationship between state and local government at that time. And we came up with something called Community Solutions, which is now called Oregon Solutions, which is a way of solving problems by bringing everyone to the table to find the middle ground, to find the middle path. I'm very proud of that. And from there, after those first 2 terms, I went to work for TriMet. And my kamikaze mission was to find the resources to build out the light rail system. And I found the resources to build the Tilikum Bridge, which hopefully you've either walked over or ridden transit over.
Yep,
It's
very
an
nice.
iconic bridge. I've served on a variety of boards and commissions. The last one was chair of the Oregon Providence Health System.
So why Portland City? What inspired that? I mean, with that track record.
Well, I looked at the landscape, Greg, and the big changes that we're going through from one form of government to another form. And I thought we need people with experience to come in and to do
thank
this.
Goodness, yes.
People who have a track record of success or a track record of getting things done. I think, we've suffered in Portland, and I heard a lot about this on the doorstep, with the sense that Portland can't execute. We're kind of stuck. We promise things, we don't get them done. And there's a lot of frustration around that. So I thought maybe I could make a difference. And with this new form of government and the new way of voting, you didn't have to run against anyone. There are no incumbents necessarily. So I was running for myself and for what I had to offer the people in District 4. And, there were 30 candidates in District 4. And fortunately, I was the first to be elected. I got over the 25% required in the first round. So that was good news for me.
Oh, definitely.
Thank you, Councilor Clark, for giving us some background about yourself and all the things that you've done in your previous roles. I'd now like to ask you some questions regarding housing in the city of Portland. So as you're well aware, Portland continues to face a major housing shortage. What policies would you support to help increase the construction of rental housing at all levels of affordability?
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate that. I heard a lot about that on the doorstep as well. And I talked a lot about moving from the city of no to the city of yes, that we used to be the city that works. I'm not sure we've been working. I think we've had a propensity just to declare no. So I think, first of all, changing the attitude at City Hall to a more customer service friendly attitude. And as far as housing goes, I think that means maybe navigators, streamlining the permitting process, making some changes in zoning so that it's easier to get through, even looking at things as controversial as design review. There may be things that we need to remove or change. And I'm all about doing that.
Absolutely. I think you raised some really good points. One thing that makes Multifamily Northwest members differ from some other housing provider organizations in the state is we really focus on policies after the construction of a property and when it's up and running. And so often we care a lot about administrative burdens and challenges that might increase operational costs on our members. And so as a newly elected counselor in the city of Portland, would you be open to exploring potential changes to some current regulations that can maybe help offset some of the costs that really ultimately affect rental prices in the city?
Absolutely. And I look forward to having regular office hours or setting up a regular meeting to meet with people from your industry, as well as the people that are not necessarily owners yet, but want to be owners, as well as the mom and pops, I think, too. I have a lot of friends who are mom and pop owners of real estate who are very aware of those administrative burdens. It's very difficult for them, people who own just a few units, to actually keep up with the kinds of changes that are coming. Now, I do believe that we have been preempted as a local government from regulating certain things. I think the rent control situation may be a state mandate. I'm not sure.
Portland came in first, and now the states come behind it, but Portland was the first to go through. Then there's some regulations that are very specific to Portland, and each, I mean, that's one of the problems is it's, depending on what county or what, municipality you're in, it does cause issues and adds to the complexity of owning, rental property as being a rental housing provider in the state.
Well, it's those kinds of issues I'm interested in learning a lot more about from your industry and trying to craft what the middle path is for everyone.
Absolutely. It's like I said, it's incredibly challenging, not only from our members, but then from a variety of other folks that maybe aren't members of our organization, but are operating the housing space. So we appreciate the opportunity to work with you now that you're a sitting city councilor.
Absolutely.
And I know, one thing I think we've felt in the last, I would say 5 or 6 years has been, there's a lot of talk about engaging, but, are all stakeholders being brought in? And it really seems like a lot of things were pre-baked in decision-making. And, and I've talked to various select officials, they don't understand the complexities of, operating a rental housing property, being a rental housing provider, and not having those operators to the table when we're talking about regulations and then the unintended consequences. So I guess, trying to find maybe a new light, like you said, instead of being the city of no, being yes, I think is very encouraging because it's been felt like the voice was never being heard.
I understand that. I think some of us might even be willing to set up some sort of an advisory group or a ongoing work group so that we can hear these issues as they come up specifically, the data that you have about those issues, but something that we can do, have a regular way of communicating.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And in terms of ways to help work with city council, our organization does have 2 apartment report luncheons every year where we talk about the latest data regarding rent prices, vacancy, and we have a whole host of other industry experts talk about the issues. We'd love to invite you and the other city council members to come join us.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And I'm glad to hear that you provide the data because there's a lot of anecdotal information floating around and you don't always know what to believe, whether it's about rents, vacancy rates, some of the issues that you bring up. So it would be good to get that kind of data from you on a regular basis.
Well, we're happy to share it. That's what we do. So I have a question regarding the election. Was really a lot of it was safety and homelessness, and it seems as if we've got to change. And we're kind of coming out of. I mean, it's not saying it's not fixed, but we got a new light on that. That said, there is a competitive disadvantage for Multnomah County and the city of Portland from a tax standpoint. I mean, how is that? I mean, how do you try to address that coming in? Is that something have you had a chance to even think about that? Or are we still kind of dealing with the safety and the housing side? I'm just curious when I'm talking to very selected officials, my hope is that with new people in office, that side gets addressed. But we still have this underlying current of, look what's going on in Clark County, which is, I think, a direct
Right.
benefit to some of the issues here. How do you address that, or what's your thought on that?
Well, you're asking a lot of different things at the same time, Greg. I think that the public safety issue and the homeless issue is still top of mind for a lot
most
of
definitely.
people.
Yeah, yes.
And a lot of people campaigned on that. But a lot of people also campaigned on housing, the lack of affordable housing, just the lack of housing, the lack of units on the whole continuum. So I think you're going to see a lot more action around that, I'm hoping, from the current city council. There's also a great sensitivity to the tax issue that you bring up. It certainly came up in my campaigning in my district. There's a lot of angry people who were very concerned about the tax burden and the inequities in the tax burden. I think it's important that we as a council have this conversation about how do we address that. Portland is great for voting for the popular thing of the day, whatever it is. And I actually said at house parties, when people would complain about that, I just said, well, quit voting for these things because, the population of Portland votes yes on every tax measure. So I think we at least need to have some sort of a moratorium on that, anything new, and maybe take a closer look at what we have had and hear from you and the chamber and others about exactly what is that burden, who is it affecting, how can we deal with that. I would just say in addition to that, just riff a little bit on that, is I'm very concerned that our property tax revenues are way down and that the city is going to face real budget cuts in the next 25-26 that this new council will have to deal with. And part of that relates back to the homeless issue, the public safety issue, particularly in the downtown area where property values have dropped precipitously. Leases are being renegotiated at a much lower rate. I'm sure you're all over that issue. But what that means consequently is that the city's property tax revenues are down. You would expect them under, ballot measure 5 and measure 50 to be at, roughly 3% or under 3% a year. We're looking at under 1%. And that's not good. So we have to fix those downtown issues that I mentioned, the public safety, the perception. And we need to fix them, not just for our own, property tax benefit, but I think we've gotten a bad reputation in the development community writ large, in the investment community writ large. I'm very concerned that we turn that reputation around so that people are more willing in your business to invest in Portland.
Well, and our business is all predicated on jobs. I mean, that's where I get asked all the time, being in the what do I think is going to be the hot markets, or where do I think development's going to go? And I'll say to people, when I want to answer those, I'll talk to an office broker, an industrial broker, and say, is there still demand? We will follow jobs. So my concern for Portland is, like you brought up, the lack of revenue. Historically, lately, we've been, let's tax, so however you want to say, tax the upper income. My concern is with that reputation, not so much on housing, because if we have jobs coming, housing will come. What do you do to incentivize businesses to come and want to open a business in Portland when you have this income tax issue? You have this. I understand Portland's going to be more of a yes, not no, but I mean, how do you do that when then on the flip side, you're going to be, your property tax revenue from downtown is going to be down? Well,
that's the conundrum, isn't it?
Right.
And trying to find the balance there. I'm concerned, too, about the big employers, what's happening with Intel, what's happening in healthcare. Those are going to affect our economy as well, and where the new jobs are going to come. I hope that the new energy economy, the kind of innovation that's going on, that we may become a center for some of that and bring jobs back to Portland. But again, I do think that turning this back into the city that works, the city that does say yes, is going to be good for everyone. It's going to be good for the small employer and the large employer in trying to bring them back. But again, it goes back to our reputation too, not just the way we operate, but have we cleaned things up? Have we taken care of graffiti? Have we removed crime? Have we taken care of the homeless people on the street? That all works together. I think there isn't one particular thing that's going to happen. I think it all has to happen at the same time.
And I think you raise a really great point, Counselor. The now second highest expense on a multifamily housing provider is insurance. And we know that with insurance premiums, we've faced a major uptick. And a lot of this is due to public safety issues. So what you're saying is definitely going to not only support the public safety, but also will help reduce costs on the premiums and will help lower rents in the city. So really great that you're focused on that.
That's good news. You know, I don't know. I'll just ask you, Zach and Greg, about the impact of the kind of weather disasters that we're seeing around the country, that our insurance rates are somehow linked to those as well. I think that we're all going to be paying for what's happening around the country with the, what do they call them? The river storms,
bomb cyclones,
the bomb cyclones,
Right.
the forest fires. All those kinds of things are going to affect our insurance rates as well, which really worries me. You look at what happened in California. I mean, the insurance companies in some cases are not even going to insure housing anymore in some communities. And I hope that doesn't happen here, but just that fear is out there.
Well, I think that's what I mean. Zach hit on a little bit as we talk about housing and developing housing, but there's not a lot of thought about, when you're going to develop, you're looking at the economics of developing housing, but then part of that economics is what happens once you've owned it. And so when you have added regulations on top of insurance, all these costs on top, capital's going to go someplace else. And so that's my concern is there's been a focus on how do we develop? Yes, we need to make building permits easier. We need to do all this, but there's no looking at, that's still not going to solve the problem if capital can go somewhere else, it's more dependable and there's, less cost, that's what's going to happen. So I think, I'm great to hear that you're open to, having stakeholders involved that are just not of one side of the argument.
Absolutely. I think it's incumbent on all of us elected officials to really understand how you're impacted by those things, what that means to the rental market, the ongoing rental market.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to our audience. We'll see you next time on HFO TV. Thank you again. That was great.
Our entire office specializes in multifamily real estate, making HFO the largest multifamily brokerage in the Pacific Northwest. Your success is our passion. Build your legacy with HFO. Call 503-241-5541 or visit our website at hfore.com for more information.